Imagine waking up one morning to what felt like the most perfect life you could ever ask for. You had built a thriving career as an audiobook producer, surrounded every day by the gentle hum of recording equipment and the warm voices of talented people bringing stories to life for listeners all over the world. At home, you shared everything with a beautiful wife who had stood by your side for 15 steady years, the kind of partnership that made you feel safe and loved through every season of life. The mornings started with shared coffee and quiet talks. The evenings ended with comfortable silences that spoke of deep trust, and the future seemed bright and full of promise, like a favorite book you never wanted to finish. But then, without any warning at all, the warmth vanished. Weeks stretched on with complete silence from the woman you had given your whole heart to. No good mornings, no gentle good nights, just an empty quiet that grew heavier with every passing day. When the truth finally came into the light, it hit like a cold wave you never saw approaching. She had been sharing her time and her heart with her boss in a secret affair, and there were hidden parts of her past about children she had never once mentioned in all those 15 years together. In that heartbreaking moment, you stood at a crossroads most of us hope we never face. Would the pain cause you to crumble and lose yourself completely? Or would you find the quiet strength inside to stand tall and fight for the life you deserved? What happens deep in your soul when the one person you trusted with every dream, every fear, and every tender moment betrays you in ways so unexpected they leave you breathless and wondering how you missed the signs? My name is Curtis Rafferty. I am 39 years old, and until just 3 months ago, I truly believed I understood every corner of my marriage. 15 years with the same woman gives you a gentle confidence, the kind where you think you know the shape of your shared days by heart. You feel certain about the little routines, the inside jokes, and the way your lives fit together so naturally. But then one ordinary day arrives, and you realize with a sinking feeling that what you thought was a solid home was actually built on something as fragile as a house of cards, ready to shift with the smallest breath of truth. The weight of that realization settled in my chest like a quiet ache that would not let go. I ran a small audiobook production studio in Portland, a cozy space filled with the soft glow of computer screens and the faint scent of fresh coffee from the break room. Talented voice actors walked through my doors each day, their words painting pictures for listeners who needed an escape or a little comfort in their own busy lives. It felt almost funny in the saddest way that I spent my time helping others tell their stories while missing the one quietly unfolding right under my own roof. Between handling the voice actors with their careful scripts, working alongside the sound engineers who made every detail crisp and clear, sitting down with publishers to plan new projects, and staying on top of all the new technology that kept changing our work, my days were full in the best possible way. Yet somehow, in the middle of all that focus, I missed the biggest change happening quietly at home, the one that would turn my world upside down. Morning, I said softly that Tuesday in April, sliding a warm cup of coffee across the smooth kitchen island toward Bethany. She was already dressed for her day in a neat blazer and pants that looked so professional, while I stood there in my comfortable old t-shirt and jeans, the kind that felt right after hours spent in the sound booth. When you work with creative voices all day, comfort matters more than anything else. She did not say a word back, not even a small nod or a quick smile. She simply picked up the mug, took a slow sip, and kept her eyes on her phone, scrolling without pause. The kitchen felt suddenly cooler, the usual morning light from the window not quite reaching the space between us. I thought maybe the stress from her job was weighing on her more than usual. The pharmaceutical company where she worked was in the middle of an important clinical trial, the kind that could affect so many people if it went well. And as a senior data analyst, she carried a heavy load on her shoulders every single day, the kind of responsibility that can make even the strongest person feel tired inside. Big day with the trial results coming soon, I tried again, hoping to connect. Still nothing came back. Not even a glance my way or the smallest sound of acknowledgement, just the gentle tapping of her fingers on the screen. I told myself it was only concentration, the way we all sometimes get lost in our own thoughts when the world feels busy. But the same quiet happened again at dinner that evening and later when we got ready for bed. And then the next morning brought the same empty space where words used to live. By the fourth day of this heavy silence, I knew in my heart that something was truly wrong, the kind of wrong that settles deep and will not fade. The silence was not just the lack of conversation. It carried a cold feeling with it, something deliberate and planned, like a wall being built one quiet brick at a time. Like any husband who still cared, I asked her straight one evening while she sorted papers at her home office desk. "Bethany, have I done something to upset you?" I reached out and rested my hand gently on her shoulder, hoping for even a small connection. She shrugged my hand away and moved to the other side of the room, as if my touch had suddenly become too much to bear. A chill ran through me right then, the kind that starts in your chest and spreads quietly. This was not just a passing mood or a busy phase that would end soon. This was my wife of 15 years slowly and carefully shutting me out of her world, moment by quiet moment. Days turned into weeks, and Bethany's silence became the new rhythm of our home, a heavy presence that filled every room we used to share so easily. I tried every gentle thing I could think of to reach her. I brought home her favorite warm takeout from the little Italian place she loved, left sweet notes on her nightstand, hoping she would read them later, and even planned a quiet weekend trip back to the coast where we had spent our honeymoon years ago. Nothing seemed to touch the invisible wall she had placed between us. The air in our house grew thicker with each passing day, and my heart felt the strain of trying so hard with no response. "Maybe she is having an affair," my old friend Ray said one evening over cold beers at Murphy's, the cozy pub we had visited together since our younger days. The dim lights and familiar smell of wood and hops usually brought comfort, but not that night. Ray had been my steady friend since college, the kind of person who always spoke the truth even when it hurt to hear it. I nearly choked on my drink at his words. "Bethany?" No, that could not be right. The idea had crossed my mind in quiet moments, but hearing it spoken out loud made my stomach tighten with a sharp worry. Then what else could explain the complete silence like this? People do not simply stop speaking to the person they share a life with for no reason at all. Ray waved to the bartender for another round, his face serious in the soft light. "Has anything else felt different lately?" I ran my fingers through my hair and noticed again how the gray was spreading at my temples, a small reminder that time was moving forward for both of us. Her recent promotion was one change, I answered. She was now leading the whole research department, which meant longer hours and more weight on her shoulders than before. "Promotions do not turn someone completely quiet toward their husband," Ray said, looking at me with steady eyes. "Listen, Curtis, you are my closest friend, but you have always had a blind spot when it came to Bethany. Remember how she pushed you to end things with Bryson years ago?" I winced at the memory of Bryson, my old business partner and dear friend. We had started the audiobook studio together, but a sudden disagreement, one that Bethany had encouraged strongly, left me with the business and him with an unhappy goodbye. "That situation was different," I said quickly. "Bryson made choices without talking to me first, and it caused real problems. That is what she explained at the time." "That is what she told you," Ray replied, his voice dropping lower in the quiet pub. "But did you ever hear his side of the story before cutting him out?" I changed the subject right away, feeling uncomfortable with how close the conversation was getting to truths I was not ready to face. Back home that evening, I found Bethany in the home office, the blue light from her two computer screens lighting up her face as she studied spreadsheets and numbers. "We need to talk," I said from the doorway, my voice steady but hopeful. No answer came, and she did not even look up from her work. "This has gone on long enough, Bethany. Whatever is wrong, whatever I did, we can work through it together. But this silence is hurting us both more than you know." She kept typing without pause, as if my words were nothing more than background noise in an empty house. I stepped closer and gently turned her chair so we could face each other. For the first time in weeks, our eyes met, and what I saw there sent a fresh chill through me. There was no anger, no sadness, and not even any clear dislike. Just a quiet emptiness where the warmth I used to see had once lived so comfortably. "Do you even hear me anymore?" My voice caught a little as the feelings I had been holding back finally showed. She let out a small sigh, the kind you give when someone is interrupting something important. "I hear you, Curtis. I am simply very busy right now." Those were the first words she had spoken to me in 17 long days, and they felt cold and distant, like she was talking to a stranger who had wandered into the wrong room. "Busy for 3 full weeks without even a kind word to your husband." I tried hard to keep my voice calm, though my heart was racing. She turned back toward her computer screen without another glance. "I do not have time for this kind of drama. The trial we are working on could help millions of people. And what about our life together? Does that still matter at all to you?" No reply came, only the steady sound of her fingers on the keys, making it clear the conversation was over in her mind. As I stood there feeling invisible once again, a cold understanding settled over me like a heavy blanket. My wife would not speak to me for weeks on end, and nothing I tried could change that simple fact. The real question now was how much longer I could keep living like a ghost in my own home. 3 more weeks of that same heavy silence passed. 21 days of sharing space with a woman who looked like my wife, but felt like a complete stranger. My patience had grown thinner than the old slippers I wore in the recording booth after long days. And that Sunday morning, as I watched her carefully put on her makeup before heading out to meet someone from work, I knew I had reached my limit. It was time to step away, at least for a little while, so I could clear my head and decide what to do next with a calmer heart. "I am going for a drive," I said quietly, not really expecting any reply. To my surprise, Bethany glanced at me through the mirror for just a second. "Fine," she answered in a flat voice that hung in the room like something lifeless. I picked up my keys and favorite leather jacket, then paused at the bedroom door before leaving. "Will you be here when I get back?" The question carried more meaning than the words alone, and we both felt it. She went back to her makeup, her hands moving with careful focus. "I have meetings all day. The trial does not stop just because it is Sunday, Curtis." I stood there a moment longer, looking at the woman who had shared my bed and my life for 15 years. New lines had appeared around her eyes that her makeup could not fully hide, and there was a new firmness in her jaw that had not been there in our earlier days. Time was touching both of us, but something deeper had shifted too, something that felt final and sad. "You know," I said, my voice steadier than the feelings inside me, "a marriage needs words to stay alive. Silence like this is just a slow way of saying goodbye." She set her mascara down with slow, deliberate movements. Maybe some things are better left unsaid. It was the most she had spoken to me in weeks, yet somehow those few words felt even heavier than the silence had. I walked out of the room, the sound of my boots on the hardwood floors echoing through the house we had built together with so many hopes. As I started my Harley, the one special thing she had always disliked, a strange calm came over me. The deep rumble of the engine moved through my whole body, feeling more honest than any talk we had shared lately. I rode with no particular place in mind, letting the fresh spring air brush against my face and clear away some of the fog in my thoughts. Eventually, I found myself parked outside Ray's apartment building. He opened the door wearing comfortable gym shorts and an old t-shirt, surprise showing clearly on his face. "Curtis, it is not even noon on a Sunday. What brings you here?" I ran my hand through my wind-tousled hair and tried to smile. "I needed to get away for a bit. Mind if I stay here with you for a little while?" Ray stepped aside right away, concern written across his kind features. "Of course, my place is your place. There are cold drinks in the fridge if you want one." I turned down the drink but accepted the warm coffee he offered instead. As the strong, bitter taste reached me, my phone gave a small buzz on the table. The message was from a number I did not recognize. "Is this Curtis Rafferty, the audiobook man? It is Bryson. We need to talk. It is about Bethany." I stared at the words on the screen, my coffee suddenly forgotten. Bryson. After 6 full years without any contact, hearing from him felt like seeing a ghost from the past, and he wanted to speak about Bethany. "Who is that?" Ray asked, noticing the look on my face. I showed him the message without a word. Ray gave a low whistle. "The story keeps getting more complicated. Are you going to meet him?" Before I could answer, another message arrived. "Please, Curtis, it is important. Murphy's at 1 o'clock. I think I have to go," I said, typing a short reply. "To confirm." 2 hours later, I sat in a quiet back booth at Murphy's, sipping a plain seltzer and watching the door for a face I had not seen in years. Bryson walked in exactly on time, looking older but carrying himself with the same sure step he always had. "Time does not spare any of us, Curtis." He held out his hand, and after a brief pause, I shook it firmly. "Thanks for coming to meet me. Your message caught my attention," I said, studying him closely. The old tension between us suddenly felt far away and small. Bryson ordered a beer and then looked straight at me. I have thought about reaching out for months now, but after seeing Bethany with him again last week, I could not stay quiet any longer. My mouth went dry in an instant. Him, Daniel Mercer, the vice president of clinical research at the pharmaceutical company. The name landed like a heavy blow. Daniel Mercer, Bethany's new boss since her promotion. The same man she had been meeting with every weekend lately. How long has this been going on? My voice sounded strange even to me. Bryson's face softened with real kindness. At least 4 months that I know about. My sister works in their human resources department. They have not been very careful about hiding it. Curtis, I took in the words and felt a strange numbness spreading through my body. Why are you telling me this now? The last time we spoke, we were not exactly on friendly terms. Bryson rubbed his face with one hand. That whole situation was Bethany's idea from the start. She convinced you I was taking money from the business. Remember. The real reason she wanted me out was that I knew things about her past, the children she had before she ever met you. I almost choked on my drink. What children? She had 2 little ones in her early 20s and gave them up for adoption. There were also 2 miscarriages before that. She never told you, did she? That is why she always said she did not want children with you, claiming it was all about her career when the truth was buried in a past she kept completely hidden. The floor beneath me seemed to move. After 15 years of marriage, I was learning I had been living with someone I did not truly know at all. I stayed at Murphy's long after Bryson left, staring into my empty glass while the afternoon light shifted across the table. My whole world had tilted sideways, showing me layers of secrets I never dreamed existed. Bethany had carried children before we met and had been pregnant 4 times, yet she had insisted for our entire marriage that kids were not part of our future. All those years of her steady reasons now felt like careful stories hiding something much deeper. You okay to drive home? The bartender's gentle voice pulled me back to the moment. I nodded and left some cash on the table. Outside, the bright afternoon sun felt too cheerful for the earthquake that had just shaken my life apart. I climbed onto my Harley, but instead of heading back to Ray's place, I found myself riding toward the house we had shared. A conversation was now necessary, and it could not wait any longer. When I pulled into our driveway, an unfamiliar Audi sat neatly in Bethany's usual spot. Through the big front window, I could see her sitting in our living room, laughing easily with a man I had only met twice at company events. Daniel Mercer was right there on my couch in my home. Something strong and protective rose up inside my chest. I had spent weeks walking carefully around her silence, questioning everything about myself and wondering what I had done wrong. And here she was, bringing her lover into our shared space while believing I was safely away at Ray's. I stepped inside quietly through the side door, their voices drifting clearly down the hallway. He is completely clueless, Bethany was saying, her tone light and almost amused. He keeps trying to make things better like a sad little puppy hoping for attention. How much longer are you planning to keep this going? Daniel's voice came back smooth and calm. The silent treatment feels a bit much. It is working though, isn't it? Besides, I need to make sure my position is safe before we move ahead with the divorce. The word divorce landed like a sudden blow, not because I still hoped to save our marriage. That possibility had clearly passed, but because she had been planning every step so carefully while I had been trying so hard to reach her. I walked into the living room and their conversation stopped at once. Curtis. Bethany stood up quickly, her face moving from surprise to a careful calm. I thought you were out for the whole day. Clearly I was wrong, I answered, keeping my voice even and my eyes steady. Hello, Daniel, enjoying my scotch. Daniel set the crystal glass down on the table. It had been a wedding gift from my parents many years ago. He looked uncomfortable, but not nearly as embarrassed as I might have expected. Curtis, this is not what it seems, Bethany began in the same careful tone she used for work presentations. No, I leaned against the door frame and crossed my arms. Because it looks exactly like you are entertaining your lover in our home while talking about divorce plans over the 18-year-old scotch my father gave us for our 10th anniversary. I turned to Daniel. Did she ever mention the children she had before we met, or are you in for your own surprises later on? Bethany's face lost all its color in an instant. How did you find out? Bryson reached out to me. Turns out he was never stealing from the business after all. He simply knew too many of your secrets. Daniel looked back and forth between us, confusion clear on his face. What children? I gave a short, empty laugh. Ask your girlfriend. I am sure she will have a smooth explanation ready. She is very good at that. I walked past them both and headed straight to our bedroom, pulling a suitcase from the closet. Bethany followed and closed the door behind her. You had no right to bring up my private past like that. All the gentle mask was gone now. Those pregnancies happened long before I ever met you. They have nothing to do with you. I kept packing my clothes in steady, careful movements. 15 years together, and I had to learn about it from a man you turned into a villain just to protect your secrets. That is the real problem, Bethany. Not your past, but all the lies you built around it. Where are you going? Her question held no worry, only cool calculation. Does it matter now? You have clearly moved on with your life. I zipped the suitcase closed with a final sound. I will have my lawyer get in touch with yours. I am sure you already have one waiting. The audiobook studio became my safe place in the days after that difficult afternoon. The thick soundproof walls, the steady hum of the equipment, and the focused energy of the voice actors creating new worlds helped keep my personal pain at a distance. You look like you have not slept in days, Maria said one morning, handing me a fresh cup of coffee as I sat down at the mixing console. She had been with the studio since the early days, her sharp technical skills matched only by her honest heart. Thanks for noticing, I answered, rubbing my tired eyes. How is the Patterson project coming along? It is right on schedule, but that is not what I meant. She leaned against the door frame. Her expression kind but direct. Bethany called the studio 3 times yesterday. My jaw tightened at the sound of her name. Did she say what she wanted? She was asking where you are staying. She said your phone goes straight to voicemail every time. Because I turned it off on purpose. I started the console, hoping the work would fill the empty space inside me. Let us focus on the recordings today, okay? All right, Maria raised one eyebrow but did not press further. That was one thing I truly appreciated about her and about the studio. Here we measured success by talent and good work, not by personal drama. By noon, I was deep in the editing of a thriller series, the steady rhythm of cutting and layering sounds giving my mind a welcome break from everything else. Then the front door buzzer sounded during a quiet moment. I will get it, I told Maria, stretching my tight shoulders. When I opened the door, Bryson stood there looking a little unsure. Bad timing. I hesitated for just a second, then stepped aside. Actually, your timing could not be better. We could use another pair of good ears on this project. His face showed surprise, then a careful smile. Bryson had always been the stronger editor between us, with a natural sense for timing and feeling that made every story come alive. Working side by side again felt surprisingly easy, as if the 6 years apart had simply faded away. We slipped back into our old way of communicating with just a few words or nods, the comfortable shorthand of longtime friends. You are staying at Ray's place for now, Bryson asked during a short break while the studio was quiet around us. I nodded for the moment. I am looking for my own place, but the rental market here is not easy. He stirred his coffee slowly, thinking. I have a small studio apartment above my garage. It is nothing fancy, but it is private and quiet if you need it. The offer sat between us, carrying years of history we had not spoken about. Why would you offer to help me after everything that happened? The question had been weighing on my mind since the pub. Bryson set his mug down gently. Because Bethany did not only hurt you when she pushed me out. She hurt the whole studio and the friendship we had built. I have had 6 years to understand that holding on to anger only makes life heavier. I looked at my oldest friend and noticed the new lines around his eyes, the quiet maturity that had softened his younger. Energy, we had both grown older and changed in our own ways. I really appreciate the offer, I said at last. Let me think about it for a day or two. Later that same evening, while I was locking up the studio, my phone buzzed with a message from Bethany's lawyer. It was a formal request for a meeting to talk about separation terms. The cold, professional words felt sharper than any angry shout could have. Under all the legal language lay the quiet end of 15 years of shared dreams, private jokes, and lives that had grown together like 2 trees with roots intertwined. I sat in my parked car for a long time, the message glowing in the dark. Then, instead of driving back to Ray's, I found myself heading toward Bryson's address. Some old bridges, I was learning, could be made stronger than they had been before. Bryson's garage apartment was simple. It had a small kitchen area, a bathroom that felt snug, and furniture that had seen many years. But it offered 2 things I needed most right then: quiet privacy and distance from the house that no longer felt like home. "It is not the Ritz," Bryson said with a small smile as he handed me a spare key. "It is perfect," I answered, setting my suitcase down on the worn wooden floor. Through the one window I could see the mountains in the distance, their peaks still touched with spring snow. "Listen, about the studio," Bryson began, his hands in his pockets. "No pressure at all, but if you could use an extra pair of hands, I am between projects right now." I studied him, seeing the friend I had lost because of careful lies. "You are really open to coming back? Let us try it for a while," he said with a half smile. "We can see if we still work well together." 2 days later, we were deep in a fantasy series, our different styles fitting together smoothly again like they always had. The voice actor, a kind man with a rich, deep voice, gave perfect takes one after another while Bryson and I nodded behind the glass. During a short break, my phone buzzed with another message from Bethany's lawyer. "Meeting tomorrow at 2 o'clock in our offices. Please confirm you will be there." "Bad news?" Bryson asked, noticing my face. "Lawyers," I said, slipping the phone away. "Tomorrow at 2. Would you like to come with me for support?" I almost said no out of habit. For 15 years, I had handled everything on my own, believing that standing alone showed strength. But the past few weeks had taught me something gentler. Accepting help from a true friend was not weakness, it was wisdom. "Actually, yes, I would really appreciate that." The next day, we sat in a plain conference room across from Bethany and her sharp-suited lawyer. My own attorney, a straightforward woman named Elaine, spoke clearly. "My client objects to Mrs. Rafferty's request regarding the business. Rafferty Audio Productions began before the marriage and grew mainly through Mr. Rafferty's skills and relationships with clients." Bethany's lawyer leaned forward. "Mrs. Rafferty's financial help in the early years should be considered." I interrupted gently, meeting Bethany's eyes directly. "Those were loans that were paid back completely by 2011, with interest, and I have every document right here." I slid a folder across the table. Bethany's calm expression flickered for just a moment. She had not expected me to keep such careful records, but I had learned that lesson the hard way years earlier when she had created false stories about Bryson. Furthermore, Elaine continued, "My client is willing to give up any claim on the family home in return for complete ownership of the business and all its equipment." It was a thoughtful choice. The house might be worth more on paper, but the studio was my daily joy and my way of helping others. Bethany had never really understood that part of me. To her, it had always been just another item on a list. "We will need time to review these terms," her lawyer said stiffly. As the meeting ended, Bethany pulled me aside in the hallway. "This angry side of you does not look good, Curtis." I almost smiled. "Standing up for myself is not anger. It is something I should have done a long time ago." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "I helped build that studio. You know it would have failed without me." For a moment I saw the uncertainty behind her polished face, the need to control and take credit. "You have told yourself that story for so long that you believe it," I said quietly. "But we both know who really built the business, and it was not you." I walked out with Bryson beside me, feeling lighter than I had in years, as if I had finally set down a heavy load I had carried without noticing. The small cafe near the studio had become my morning habit. Strong coffee, a quiet corner table, and a few minutes to gather my thoughts before the day's recordings began. I was reading through production notes when a shadow fell across the table. "Mind if I sit with you?" I looked up and saw Maria holding her own coffee. I nodded toward the empty chair. "How is the reunion with Bryson going?" she asked, stirring a little sugar into her cup. "Surprisingly well." And it was true. Having him back in the studio felt right, like a missing piece had quietly returned to its place. "We get more done together than I ever expected." Maria leaned back and studied me with her usual direct kindness. "I am not surprised at all. The two of you always balanced each other perfectly. You bring the steady structure and he brings the creative spark. It makes beautiful sound." I smiled at her honest words. I guess I needed that reminder. "So what is happening with the house?" Ray mentioned Bethany will keep it in the divorce. I trust him to share my news with the team. Still, I did not mind Maria knowing. After 8 years working side by side, she felt more like family than most relatives. "It was my choice," I explained. "I let her have the house in return for full ownership of the studio." She is not happy about it, but her lawyer told her to accept the terms. Maria nodded with quiet approval. That was a smart decision. Houses can always be replaced. What you built at the studio comes from your heart and cannot be taken away. My phone gave a small buzz with a new email. I looked down and froze for a moment. The message was from Daniel Mercer, Bethany's former lover. I need to meet with you. There is information you should know about Bethany, today at 1 o'clock. What is wrong? Maria asked, seeing my face change. I showed her the short message. Bethany's friend wants to talk. Maria's eyebrows rose in surprise. Are you going to meet him? Good question. My first thought was to delete the email and cut every last tie to the painful web Bethany had created. But a quiet curiosity stayed with me. What could Daniel possibly know that I still needed to hear? I think I have to go, I decided, if only to close this chapter once and for all. At 1 o'clock, I sat on a bench in a downtown park, watching pigeons search for crumbs on the path. Daniel arrived right on time, his usual polished look a little softer than the last time I had seen him in my living room. Thanks for meeting me, he said, sitting down beside me. Let us skip the small talk. What is this really about? He looked down at his hands, the expensive watch catching the sunlight. Bethany ended things between us. She said she needed to focus on her own future now. And why does that involve me? My tone stayed cool. I had no interest in the details of their broken relationship. Because she is using the same careful plan on me that she used on you. He took out his phone and opened an email. She told the company board that I pressured her into the relationship and threatened her job if she refused. I stared at him. Is any of that true? No. His answer sounded honest and tired. It was completely mutual. She was the one who started it. Now there is an investigation, and suddenly I am the one who looks like the problem while she plays the victim. The story felt painfully familiar. It was the same pattern she had used against Bryson years earlier, carefully painting herself as the wronged person. Why are you telling me this? Because she is already setting you up the same way. Daniel looked straight at me. She mentioned she has proof that you used company money for the studio. She is building a case to take half the business in the divorce. A cold anger moved through me. Even now, with our marriage over, she was still planning and manipulating from the shadows. She will not succeed, I said with quiet certainty. I have every record of every transaction, signed statements, and bank details. Unlike you, I have seen this pattern before. Daniel looked smaller somehow. I had no idea who I was really dealing with. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Consider this a hard but useful lesson, I said, standing up. And Daniel, next time choose more carefully. 6 months after that day in my living room, I stood in the doorway of my new house. It was nothing grand, just a modest 3-bedroom home with solid bones and wallpaper that needed replacing, but every inch belonged to me alone. Last box, Bryson called, setting down a crate marked vintage vinyl in the living room, ready for the grand tour of the new studio space. I smiled and reached for my jacket. The divorce had finished 2 months earlier, cleaner than anyone expected. After Daniel's information made Bethany drop her claims on the business, she received the house and a fair settlement. I received my freedom and complete ownership of Rafferty Audio Productions, which we had proudly renamed Rafferty and More Sound Studios. Lead the way, partner. The idea to expand had come from Bryson. With more people listening to audiobooks and podcasts than ever, we rented the space right next door and doubled our room to create. The renovation took my evenings and weekends, but the work of building something fresh from the pieces of my old life felt healing in a way I had not expected. The new area shone with fresh possibility. Modern recording booths, a special section for podcasts, and a comfortable lounge where voice actors could relax before their sessions. Maria had handled hiring, bringing in 2 bright young engineers fresh from school. Not bad for 2 middle-aged men starting over, Bryson said, looking around our creation with quiet pride. Speaking of fresh starts, I received a call from a literary agent yesterday. She wants to talk about turning our audio production guides into an actual book. Bryson's eyes grew wide. That is huge. It was more than huge. It felt like quiet proof that the skills I had spent decades building had real value, the kind Bethany had never truly seen. There is something else, I added, feeling the nervousness of my nearly 40 years. With a small flutter in my stomach, I told him I had asked Maria out to dinner. A real dinner, not anything work-related. Bryson's face broke into a wide grin. It is about time. I have been dropping hints for months. I laughed, and the sound filled the new space with warmth. Life at 39 had not followed any plan I had made. My marriage had ended suddenly, I had lost the house we built, and I had been forced to begin again from the ground up. But standing there surrounded by the results of honest work, a strong new partnership, and the gentle possibility of romance with a woman who truly respected me, I understood something important. This was not the closing of my story. It was only the opening chapter of a much better one. 1 year after Bethany's betrayal, I sat in the control room of our larger studio, listening to the final mixes of our biggest project yet. An immersive audio drama with 20 voice actors, original music, and sound design that felt completely new. "It is our best work yet," Maria said softly beside me, her hand resting comfortably on my shoulder. Our relationship had grown naturally over the past 6 months, built on shared respect and a real love for the craft we both cared about. "Definitely award material," I answered, making the last small notes on the sound levels. My phone buzzed on the console. A message from Ray. Bethany was spotted at the airport. The UK office of the pharmaceutical company was not. Happy with how she handled the research, they closed her position. I showed the message to Maria, who raised one eyebrow. Karma has a quiet way of arriving. I felt no real satisfaction in her troubles, only a distant understanding that every choice eventually brings its own results. My own days had taken gentle, unexpected turns. The book deal with Bryson, the growing studio, and most of all the steady partnership with Maria, who understood my work in ways Bethany never had. "Curtis," a voice called from the front desk. "Someone is here to see you." I walked out and found a young woman waiting in the reception area. She looked to be in her early 20s, with eyes that felt strangely familiar, and stopped me for a moment. "Mr. Rafferty, I am Elise." She twisted her hands nervously. "I believe you were married to my birth mother, Bethany Crawford." The floor seemed to shift beneath my feet. One of the children Bethany had given up for adoption before we ever met. "Would you like some coffee?" I offered, finding my voice again. "I think we have quite a bit to talk about." Over the next hour, Elise shared her story with quiet courage. Her long search for the woman who had given birth to her, the cold reception she received when she finally reached out, and her simple wish to understand where she came from. "She refused to meet me," Elise explained softly. "But she mentioned you might be willing to tell me something, anything about her." Even now, Bethany was avoiding responsibility and gently pushing the questions toward me. "Some things never change. I can tell you what I know," I said carefully. "But more importantly, I think there is someone else you should meet." My friend Bryson knew parts of Bethany's past that I had never heard. As I picked up the phone to call him, watching the hopeful look on Elise's face, I understood something deep and true. Life's hardest chapters often open doors to connections we never expected. The silence that once felt like it would swallow me whole had made room for new voices, new stories, and fresh beginnings. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you needed in order to find the things you never knew your heart was waiting for. If something similar has happened to you, write in the comments and share your thoughts with us. Like this if you understand this feeling, and share the video with your friends so they can learn about this story. What do you think will happen next? Write your guesses in the comments, and don't forget to hit the bell so you don't miss any new stories.